Hey, welcome to another episode of GeekOutdoors.com. So the Panasonic G85 Autofocus is something that I've talked about in multiple videos, and I even did a video where I had a quote-unquote fix if autofocus is not working well for you. If you want to see that, I will leave it in the description area below. And my overall thoughts on the autofocus is that the Panasonic Lumix line of autofocus with their contrast-based focusing system is definitely not the most reliable, and I wouldn't say it's the best. If you want the best autofocus for your cameras, right now it's going to be Sony, Canon, even Fuji, and even Nikon is a better option versus the Panasonic Lumix lines if you want to use autofocus reliably. With all of that being said, that doesn't mean that the autofocus on this camera is unusable. And so today I'm going to be showing you a few of the different modes, or actually all the main modes that I use whenever I do need autofocus. And I'm also going to be talking about, overall what works well and what doesn't work well. And so the first thing I'm going to do is actually show you how this looks like on the camera in terms of your settings. And then I'm going to go into each one of these different autofocus modes. And so right now I'm going to actually show you some of the autofocus settings that are available on the Panasonic G85. So if you look here, I currently have 49 area. And here, this is the face and eye tracking. This is the actual tracking, and so let me show you the differences on how they actually operate in general. So if you do face and eye tracking, obviously it is following my eyes. You might be able to see that box, so that's how it actually focuses there. And then if I move over to tracking, so this is more of like if you're doing thing where there's like action, you want to actually follow something, so you would just lock on and then it will follow and track. So that's what the tracking autofocus is. So that works well if you're doing like live motion or action type stuff. And so let's go ahead and move over to the next one. And this one is 49 area. And so if you click on here, you can choose the area that you actually want to autofocus. And so this one has worked pretty well for me. And you'll see right now that it's not focusing just when I said that, but once you press it, it'll focus. And let's go ahead and move on to the custom. So the custom is very similar to the 49, but you have more control over what area you actually want to focus. So if you go there, and now it focuses on this particular area. And then the final one I have here is the actual single point. And I think this works well. All you do is you just can choose this one area, box, you move it where you want. You can increase or decrease the size, and then you lock. And that's how that particular autofocus mode works. So the autofocus mode that I'm using is the AFC continuous autofocus. So if you look on the back of your Panasonic G85, AFC is the one you should choose. And also my autofocus sensitivity is a -1. And I'm also shooting this in 4K. Now, I will say that if you shoot this in 1080p, the autofocus is going to work way better because obviously the resolution is lower, so it doesn't have to process as much. And so that's why if you want the best autofocus that this thing can provide, you want to stick with 1080p. However, I myself, I shoot pretty much everything in 4K. So let's start off with the very first autofocus mode, which is the face and eye tracking. This is the one that I use the most because overall it works consistently. And it allowed me to do something like this where I have a product in front, and the majority of times it does focus. It'll focus back to my face, and then I can have the product in front and then back to my face. And it's not always the fastest, especially if you're shooting in 4K like this. But like I said, it is consistent, and it is the one that I use the most whenever I do need autofocus. So the second autofocus mode is the tracking. So this is primarily if you're doing anything where there's movement, so more action oriented. And then in terms of the whole object in front of the camera, it does okay. As long as you're where the tracking is on the screen. And right now I actually have the tracking to my face, and so it should focus most of the time, but not all the time. So that is the tracking autofocus. I don't think it works well when you have a stationary like this where you're just in front of a camera, but if you have something that is moving, that's when it probably works the best. But once again, not for this type of video where I'm talking and then I have objects that I need to show. So the next autofocus is 49 area, and so this is good if you want to cover a larger area than just your face. And so here the whole object thing, it works okay, and sometimes I think it focuses even faster than the face and eye tracking. as you can see there. It works pretty well. Yeah, so the 49 area is probably an autofocus that I would use second to the face and eye tracking. And it's more consistent than the other ones, I would say. And it works pretty well overall. And now we have the custom multi-autofocus, where it's very similar to the 49 area, but you could actually move the different focus points. And so that'll work well if you want to get a little bit more of the focus in different areas that it doesn't allow in 49 area. And so as you can see here, it should focus. Go back. Then I'll try this again. Should focus. And then back to my face. And that's a little bit slower, but you kind of get the idea. So the custom multi-autofocus, it allows you to focus in different areas and covering a larger block. And then the final main autofocus is this single point. Now, I do like this autofocus as well, and maybe it ties with the 49 area because it allows you to center your focus point on one block, and you can actually increase or decrease the size. And so if it's ever in this single point, then it should focus wherever you are in this particular area, which is great because then you kind of have more control over where it is focusing, and it's pretty consistent in my opinion. And as you can see there, I've done this multiple times and it should focus and then back to my face. So that is my general test of the autofocus modes on the Panasonic G85. And as I did state earlier, there are so many features on this camera and just cameras in general. So it's going to take me some time to learn everything that this camera is able to do. So if I learn some new things that might improve this autofocus, I will do updates to that. Now, overall, one thing that you notice throughout all of these autofocus modes is that there's still slight issues with it. Specifically, this whole thing where the whole background is like blurring in and out, is pulsating, and then the camera's constantly hunting for the focus. Because of this contrast-based system, it's constantly checking which image is sharper, and so that's why it's doing that. And at the same time, it's checking the different contrast, the lightness and darkness. And so all of that plays into how this actual system focuses. And as I stated a little bit earlier, if you want the best autofocus, the Panasonic Lumix line of cameras, they're not it. You know, like I said, the Sonys, the Canons especially, those work really well. But overall, they are still usable depending on your environment, depending on the lens that you use and the settings that you have, and also depending on the type of videos that you make. Because for me, most of my talking head videos, I don't really need the autofocus. But if there are situations where I need to show you a product, then it really does help for me to use these autofocus modes. And so if you had any thoughts on this, whether you are a Panasonic G85 user, a Lumix user, or any of these other brands, or maybe you had your own ideas on how to improve the autofocus, be sure to leave that in the comments area below. And as always, if you did get value out of these videos, share, like, and subscribe. Hey geeks, if you are a creative geek like me and you wanted to learn how to create content on YouTube and other places on the internet, then check out my Gold Content Creators group, where you'll get access to 30 videos plus additional content for all the creative geeks out there. And the best part of it is, all of this is free. Simply head over to the link below, check out my page, and sign up for my Gold Content Creators group. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com, and I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.